Welcome to Financial Issues, where we join reality with truth, helping you make the most of your money by honoring God with your investments. Now listen in as we give you the practical tools and advice you need to become a biblically responsible investor.
Good Monday morning, everybody. Welcome back to Financial Issues this Monday, November the 18th, 2024. We're live this morning, so we'd love to hear from you. 610-363-1110 is the number to call in today. I'm Seth Udinsky. Great to be here with you all this morning. We got the entire Studio A team, a full house back here once again, and it's good to be here today. 610-363-1110 if you want to join the conversation. By the way, we have a great show today, folks. The topic that we're going to talk about today a little later on is the dangers of day trading. Kind of goes hand in hand with what we talked about there on Friday. Also, Sam Case and I will discuss our most recent petition. We have a petition right now out for MPC, Marathon Petroleum Corporation, formerly known as E66, why this company is no longer a good position for you. We'll dive a little bit deeper into that. If you've not gotten a chance to sign our petition, by the way, it's live right now. Go to financialissues.org, scroll down, click sign that petition. I will put that link in the chat a little bit later on in the show here. We'll also get the latest market and economic headlines here, and of course, your phone calls as well. 610-363-1110. I do hope you all had a great day of worship on Sunday. I hope that your pastor faithfully opened the word for you and you were able to worship with the saints in practice for what we'll do in glory. As we open the show today, a quick verse and encouragement to remind you here. Proverbs 25 verse 2 says, "It is the glory of God to conceal things, but the glory of kings is to search things out." So this verse rightly is paired with Deuteronomy 29:29, which speaks of the secret things that belong to the Lord. You've heard us mention that verse before on the show. The things revealed belong to us, however. This verse, Proverbs 22:5, is a great one. I actually didn't even know this verse existed in the Bible until recently, but when I discovered it, I thought, that's really cool, and it's kind of neat to discover something that this verse actually talks about, is the glory of kings, or generally we could say the glory of mankind, is to search out and discover the things in this world that God has created, those things that we can uncover. And it's, folks, it's good for us to have a content heart when we seek knowledge, knowing that we have a certain limit on what we can know. That's part of the difference between us and God, is that God is all-knowing and we're not. So we can only know so many things. At the same time, I hope that we won't just simply give up on the search to know more and more about God and the world that He's made. It's one of the most joyous things we can do to grow in our knowledge of God and to grow in our understanding of Him and to grow in how we put that into practice in our daily lives. It actually is to our glory, this verse says. So in your stewardship, seek the Lord first, ask for wisdom, be content, of course, with what you can't know, but then use that wisdom that He's given you to learn and understand well and grow in that knowledge. And I do believe that you'll see the fruits of that, specifically in your stewardship, but also in every area of your life. Hope that can be an encouragement for you this morning, folks. It is great to be here with you, and I do hope that you will join the conversation at 610-363-1110, or you can join us on the chat as well. We got a lively chat going right now, and it's already starting to heat up. So now's a good time to join there on financialissues.org. So the markets, quick reminder from Friday. I mentioned this. Shana's commentary from last week, it speaks to this temptation of catching the FOMO virus. Now, it might not be as tempting right now because, as we'll see in a moment, the markets have kind of dipped back down a little bit. But good reminder to just be prudent, patient, thoughtful about redeploying your cash, your dry powder, as it were. Again, a good kind of practice here is look for the sectors that might be low and start there and start redeploying some money there. And check the buy list as well for potential additions this week once commentary is posted. Lord's day or two. So let's use wisdom as we begin kind of dipping back into that dry powder that we've been keeping on hand for the last little bit. Okay, so for the markets, on Friday, we saw some sell-offs, coupled with Powell's Thursday comments. If you remember, Powell said that the Fed is basically in no hurry to cut rates, which the markets were not pleased with that. So pushed the markets downward in the backswing from last week's post-election rally. All things considered, if we look back at the last 2 weeks, it's just the markets being the markets. They shot up after Trump won, and now they're coming back down after Powell said some things, and there's just a natural ebb and flow to that as well. Some selling off also. Now, a big part of this, we can't forget this, was due to pharmaceutical stocks. Pharmaceutical stocks did not do very well at all. Part of the reason for that is they're terrified of what Robert F. Kennedy Jr. might do to the pharmaceutical industry as the incoming leader of the DHS. Very interesting. Very, very interesting indeed. Now, by late afternoon, the markets were in the same, and by the final closing bell of the week, the Dow Jones finished about 0.75% negative. The S&P 500 was well below a full percentage point, about 1.33% in the negative, and the Nasdaq was well below 2 full percentage points in the negative, about 2.25% down. For the week, the Nasdaq and the S&P 500 actually had their worst sessions in over 2 weeks. The Dow dropped over a full percentage point to close right around 43,444 points. The Nasdaq fell over 3%, ending around 18,680, and the S&P 500 dropped 2% to close right around 5,800 or so, almost 5,900. That's how the markets finished. Oil, as we're looking here in the pre-markets, let me pull this up here for us real quickly here, what oil's doing. It was down a little bit this morning, still hanging around the $67.50 a barrel range. U.S. Treasury yields going up a little bit, right around 4.45%, 4.46% actually. So that's what we're looking like right now here. The pre-markets as they sit, positive actually. Confirming that, yes, somewhat positive. The Dow's down a little bit. The S&P is just above the flat line. The Nasdaq is creeping up a little bit as well. Tesla shares have helped a little bit. They've seen a little bit of a rise, up 7%. And of course, the indices will be waiting with bated breath for the biggest earnings report of earnings season, which we'll get to in just a moment here. Quickly, we saw retail sales on Friday. Retail sales increased 0.4% in October. That followed an upwardly revised 0.8% increase in September. Core retail sales, so this excludes cars, gas, building materials, and food services, that dropped to 0.1%, after the upwardly revised 1.2% gain in September. One of the last headlines on Friday. I don't think we were able to get to it because that might have not broken until after the show, but at any rate, wanted to make sure that you all knew that for today. So this week in the economy here, not much of note today, tomorrow, or Wednesday. Thursday, we'll get the initial jobless claims as usual, and we'll also get existing home sales. And then Friday, we get the S&P Flash U.S. Services PMI. We'll also get consumer sentiment on Friday as well. That's what we're looking like for the economy. Now, earnings season. It's winding down a bit here, but we have a couple of big heavy hitters left to report. So not much at all today, not much even to mention. There are companies that will be reporting today, but not important for our purposes. Tomorrow's a bit of a big one. We'll get Walmart earnings. We'll also get Lowe's, and we'll get some others as well. We had a petition for Lowe's several months ago, rather successful one. To my knowledge, it has not gone back on our list yet, but we did see some success there in the BRI space nonetheless, which is cool. Wednesday is the big day because Wednesday we get NVIDIA. Once again, NVIDIA has been the kind of the engine that's been driving the markets for the last year and a half now as the forerunner, the pioneer of this AI tech surge that we're seeing on Wall Street. We'll also get Target as well as some others reporting earnings on Wednesday. Thursday, we get John Deere. We saw that was another one of our petitions that we put out there. Thursday, John Deere. We get some others. Friday, not much else here. So there isn't a lot in terms of volume for earnings reports here, folks. But obviously, NVIDIA alone is probably the biggest one in all of earnings season, pretty much. We're always kind of waiting. It tends to report later on towards the end. And so while the 6 other Magnificent 7 stocks have already reported, they come rather early. NVIDIA looms at the end. And so we'll get that today. We'll get that Wednesday. So that's what that's looking like here. Okay, Sam, I think we have time to hit this headline we weren't able to get to last week before the end of the break. There is apparently a future dock worker strike on the horizon. We just passed the storm of the previous one. What can you tell us about this quickly, Sam?
Oh, boy, it really looks like Donald Trump's going to have his hands full the second he takes office because you're right. The International Longshoremen's Associations, that's the union that works at all the docks on the East Coast, they're threatening to strike yet again. If you remember, the previous strike didn't really end. It was just put on hold. They came to an agreement over wages, but they did not come to an agreement over automation and other issues. Last week, they left the table with the negotiators because there were still concerns about automation issues. The ILA says it hopes to resume those negotiations very soon, but port employers, they're pretty doubtful about that, whether or not that's actually going to happen. This comes as we all know, in October, the International International Longshoremen. They went on strike for about 3 days, threatening to throw the economy into chaos. Now it looks like they could begin striking again January 15th. That's just a week out before Donald Trump becomes president. So he's really going to have his hands full the second he takes office in January.
Yeah, that'll be interesting, Sam. Definitely an interesting week there. It is. It's funny how that turned out. You know, it just so happened. And as I say this, folks, you've heard me many times before say I'm a firm believer in the providence of God over all things. But it is interesting to see how that turned out there just a couple days before Trump is set to take office, Sam. And oh, look, a potential strike. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, to be fair, this is still a good couple months out. So there's all in the real possibility that this could be resolved before that actually happens.
Absolutely. Good stuff. Sam, thanks for bringing that to our attention, man. I appreciate it. All right, folks, got to take a break here, but we'll be back right after this. We'll talk about day trading, and of course, we've got that examination of MPC coming up here after that. A lot more financial issues to get to, and the phone lines are open if you want to join the conversation. 610-363-1110. Number to call in, again, 610-363-1110. We'll be back.
Navigating through investment options can be challenging, especially when you're determined to uphold your God-given values. Every dollar you invest is a vote for the world that you want to live in. Let your values guide your investment decisions and help to shape the culture in which we live. Become a beacon of light and pave the way with biblically responsible investing. Timothy Plan, where faith and finance collide. Before investing, carefully consider the fund's investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses of the investment company. This and other important information can be found in the fund's prospectus. To obtain a copy, visit timothyplan.com or call 800-846-7526. Read each prospectus carefully before investing. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal.
We believe in being faithful stewards of what God has entrusted to us. And nothing is more important than investing in the next generation. The most impactful way to do this is by sharing the message of Jesus with young people. Crossroads Kids Club is an after-school program that brings the gospel to elementary school children in public schools nationwide. Together, we can make a lasting difference for the kingdom. To learn more and join the movement, visit reachOurschools.com. Again, that's reachOurschools.com.
Through the ministry of Preborn, the Financial Issues family has saved tens of thousands of lives of babies. What an amazing job that God has done through you, the Financial Issues family. Would you join us in saving the lives of babies? What an amazing reunion we will have in glory, meeting all the people that we have saved. Please go to preborn.org, that is preborn.org, or financialissues.org, and click on the Preborn banner.
Folks, if you were on social media over the weekend, the viral image of the day was a picture of Trump's inner circle eating McDonald's, and included in that was Robert Kennedy Jr. Sam, I thought that was pretty funny to see that picture there.
I was sharing that to all my friends and family. My mom's like, Bobby, you shouldn't be doing that. That's full of seed oils.
It is, I know. And I was wondering, I put this in the chat here, I wonder if he made his own personal meal with beef tallow. Like if he requested, this has to be beef tallow.
If you look at his face, it's hard to tell if he's got caught doing something naughty or if he's like, oh, I really don't want to have to be eating this, but Trump's making it.
Absolutely. Oh, it was funny stuff for sure, folks. That's what's coming in January. That team there, hopefully a team that can bring us back to a place of freedom and pro-family. And so we'll be keeping an eye on that for sure here, folks. That's good stuff. Okay, let's get to our teachable topic for today. Dangers of day trading. This is a good one for sure. And I'm sure that we do have some folks who maybe you've engaged in day trading in the past before. Maybe you even found success with it. You're going to hear Shana talk about how it's not really a good method for our strategy in particular, because our strategy is really all about doing it long term. So if you try to do day trading with the FISM strategy, you might not be able to do it very well. You may be wondering why. Well, we'll show you in just a moment. Here is Shana Burt talking about the potential dangers of day trading. So to start off, what are the different dangers of day trading? And, we often hear about the few success stories, and those tend to be the ones that really are talked about a lot, but I'm sure there are many, many more horror stories with it. What can you tell us about this, Shana, the dangers?
Sure. I guess I've heard probably more of the horror stories than most people do since, you know, I'm in the business where people hire me to make their their investment decisions for them.
Yeah.
And so I hear, you know, over the last 20 plus years that I've been in the business, you know, I've talked to a lot of people who weren't investing at all because they had been soured on some really bad experiences. So, you know, they got into things that they heard from a friend or a coworker, you know, something that was supposed to hit really big and, you know, make them rich overnight. And they ended up, you know, losing a good bit of money. And so, you know, maybe for years, maybe for decades, they had been, you know, just accumulating money and not investing it. And, you know, I have a friend who is still so intrigued. He's a really smart guy, but he's so intrigued by trading that he continues to do it in spite of the numerous stories that he tells me about his failures and his misses, and if he had just done this, how much money he would have made. And he's a Christian guy too, so he tells me all about the strategies and you know, the almost. But he also tells me how the accounts that he manages for the longer term, which is kind of boring to him, for his family are doing much better. So
what a surprise, right?
Yeah. You know, this day trading comes from a gambler's mentality. You know, gamblers get addicted to the emotional high that they get from a rare success. You know, that one time that they hit it big, or they know somebody that hit it big, or, you know, but if you really ask them, they end up with more losses than they do gains. Otherwise, gambling and casinos wouldn't be such a big business. Yeah. You know, so they just, you know, they get these highs from compulsively going back and rolling the dice in an effort to hit it big. Some of the other challenges of day trading are time. You know, the amount of time that you must sit in front of a computer and watch for certain opportunities. The cost of transaction fees. The same friend that told me, you know, that shared with me his experiences on a regular basis, told me that one time he analyzed his a group of trades that he did to try to accumulate a certain, or to implement a certain strategy on a discount platform, and he told me he racked up the fees that were in excess of 10% of the volume that he was trading. So even on discount brokerage platforms, that could be an issue. And then of course there's the cost of taxes. You know, if you have a short-term gain in investment where that you've held less than a year, you're going to pay taxes on that at whatever your ordinary income rate tax bracket is. If you own it for a long time, more than a year and a day, then you're going to pay the much more beneficial long-term capital gains rates, which could be 0 if you're in the 12% bracket, or most likely it's 15%, or, you know, 20 if you're in a higher tax bracket, and then, you know, closer to 23 if you include that net investment tax.
That's really helpful, Shannon. You know, we talk a lot now. I talk with my kids often. They're still young, but I'm sure you do with yours too, about habits, getting into good habits and avoiding those bad habits. Well, we see some consistent habits with day traders, I think. Can you tell us what some of these are and how they might pose a temptation to us as we maybe watch the markets going up and down?
They spend a lot of time in the past.
Yeah.
You know, they spend a lot of time in the past, and they spend a lot of time trying to get into the future, which as human beings we have limited understanding of. We don't have a clear understanding of what will happen in the future, even when it comes to prophecy and, you know, end times prophecy and things like that. We have limited understanding and limited ability to understand. So, you know, even the SEC, which is a regulatory body that governs financial professionals, they require us to disclose that past performance does not guarantee future results. So, you know, day traders are often students of history, and they obtain a very good understanding of why things happened with the benefit of hindsight. But it's very rare that things will happen exactly the same way
in the future. For example, I live on the coast and we have a lot of hurricanes. Well, there's some basic things that you do to prepare for hurricanes. You know, you get extra food, you get batteries, you get supplies, you maybe have a generator, stock up on some gasoline. But you know what? In all of the storms that I've experienced on the coast, they've all happened very differently. And that same phenomenon happens in the financial markets. You know, there's the business cycle, through the normal economic cycle, we go through peaks and troughs, but the things that cause those peaks and troughs are often very different. So it's very hard to predict the future based on what's happened in the past.
Yeah. Well said, Shana. And what would you say to a prospective FISM partner, maybe a new partner who wants to use our strategy but kind of still falls into those old habits of day trading from time to time, or maybe is trying to kind of straddle the fence and do both?
Yeah. Well, I'd say spend some time working on breaking that habit before you become a partner with us. Do not try to use our research to pick companies to day trade. You will probably not be much of a success at all. We don't focus on finding companies that are expected to go up in 5 to 10 hours or 5 to 10 days, but rather we're looking out 5 to 10 years down the road. Those are the kind of companies that we're after.
You know, the successful long-term investor needs to exhibit certain virtues as they invest. I think we've touched on one of them already, patience, of course, in our stewardship verse. What are some others, though, that we need to exhibit?
Well, you know, I really like the verse that we picked for today about, you know, reaping and sowing. It's not only a natural phenomenon that if you plant an apple seed, you're going to get an apple tree. You're not going to get an orange tree. Yeah. But it's also a spiritual law. So it reminds us again to search our hearts. If you're moving toward this idea of day trading, search your heart and find out what is moving you toward that idea. Very likely, when you get to the root of it, it's going to be fear and or greed. So maybe fear that you don't have enough time to meet your growth goals. Maybe you started saving and investing late in life. Maybe it's fear that you might have to forego some of your short-term desires in order to put those funds toward your long-term financial goals. Maybe you would, rather have that boat or that side-by-side rather than, setting aside some money for way down the road. Perhaps you find out it's greed. Maybe you think, well, I've heard that, a good long-term average, if I'm investing in the markets or in, equity type of investments, I can make 8 to 10% average over the long term if I'm willing to take some risk with it. But then you think, well, you know what? That's just not good enough, because I've heard these stories of people having 20% returns and 30% returns. But you know what? I will tell you this. Part of a long-term strategy, even if you average that 8 to 12%, you're going to experience some years most likely that are in that 20 and 30% range, but you're also going to experience some negative years. And that's why it really kind of averages out. Another scripture that we talk about a lot here at the ministry, that's kind of one of our flagstone scriptures, is that wealth grows little by little, that principle of little by little that we hear in the scriptures. Also in the story of the talents, I think we talked about that last week, and from Matthew 25 and Luke 19, the two good stewards that heard the compliment, well done, good and faithful steward, they posted 100% return, right? One turned 5 into 10, the other turned 2 into 4. So they both had, even though they were bigger numbers, it was still the same percentage. They both made 100%. But what the Bible is silent on? How long they had to make those returns. In the scripture, it tells us that their time frame was, all it says is after a long time. So, there we go again. That points us back to our long-term strategy.
Shana, that is really helpful. Speaking of profound things, I think it's very profound when we realize how simple things in this life are, like the notion that you mentioned earlier of wealth growing little by little long term. It got me thinking that applies everywhere in life, doesn't it? I mean, if I expected Josiah to know how to obey me really well as a 2-year-old, that'd be foolish, because it takes years. It takes years to be able to learn that, to help him kind of understand and realize what is sin and what is not sin, to sharpen his conscience. So if it's easy for us, I think, sometimes to think about it in terms of that way, but it's harder for us to do it with our money because we want those get-rich-quick schemes and we want to make a lot of money. But yeah, long-term, slow growth is really good.
And you know what else it takes to train up a child? Patience.
Patience, that's right.
Patience.
Right.
The scripture says that if we don't weary in doing good, we'll reap a good harvest.
Yeah, well said. Very true. Especially when they're two.
Tough years.
That's right. Hope that was encouraging to you there, folks. And I do hope that you held on to those reminders during these last couple of months. I'm not saying that we're out of the woods yet in terms of the markets here, but it's a good reminder to see, as we saw some chaos for sure, and then we saw that massive upswing with Trump's win, and we told you to keep some extra cash on hand. Hopefully you're looking not just in the next couple of months, but you're thinking, this is going to bless me in 3 to 5, 10, 15 years, depending on how long you've been doing the strategy. Hopefully it's just the longer, the better. We say that 8 to 10 year mark. Really, that's kind of like a base level, like a floor level. We would hope that you have the mindset of, I'm going to be doing this for the better part of the rest of my life. And so hopefully that can be of encouragement to you. If you do have to leave us, half-hour audience, we hope that you will have a great day, but we do hope that you'll find us on financialissues.org/live every day between 9 and 10 a.m. Eastern Time. The rest of you, we got more financial issues coming up. We'll talk about that petition and some other things as well. We'll be right back.
I'm Todd.
I'm Debbie, and we're Samaritan members.
We have 8 children, ages from 30 down to 15, and we have a ministry called Family Man Ministries.
When he left the pastorate to start the ministry, we had no income for about a year potentially, and so we were living on almost nothing. The cost of healthcare seemed impossible because we had a big family. And so when I started researching ministries, there was no comparison. It was just the best deal. And so a year after we joined, my 10-year-old daughter at the time got pneumonia, and it was scary. Someone sent a card just to Maggie, and it said, not just that we're praying for you, but that God will always take care of you, and here's $5 for you to go out and get ice cream. It was just really special.
To make that connection, that's an amazing thing. I was sold on Samaritan Ministries. I just thought, okay, I'm a part of this.
So I was just getting on my feet and I met someone and I got pregnant and I wasn't ready. How am I going to raise a baby? And I barely can take care of my daughter and myself right now. I Googled abortions and I scheduled an appointment thinking it was an abortion clinic. When I was at the clinic, after they told me how far along I was and that the baby had a heartbeat, I cried. And they gave me a minute by myself in the room. And I broke down and I prayed to God. I asked the Lord to, when I walk out of those doors, to just give me the strength to be able to go through the pregnancy. I made my decision at that time. I'm super grateful that I'm able to go down this journey with my daughter. And I'm just super glad that I didn't have an abortion. I've learned how to trust God. It feels amazing.
Pharrell came to Crossroads as a 4th grader. His name had been brought to my attention by the school principal. She was concerned about the direction he was heading.
I remember I wasn't the best kid. I got into trouble a lot.
He became a very active part of Crossroads Kids Club.
Mr. Engel, he was the leader that really impacted my life in so many ways. I honestly didn't want Crossroads to end.
We would invite all the students to come to our youth group here at Waterfront.
I felt God saying, come home, come to me. It felt like I was set free.
And I'll never forget the day when we had the privilege and the honor to baptize Pharrell.
I hugged Mr. Engel. I don't know if he understands. I'm truly, thankful to have him through the whole journey. If it wasn't for Crossroads, I probably wouldn't be in the place that I am right now. I wouldn't be a follower of Christ.
Help reach more kids like Pharrell with the hope of the gospel. Visit reachOurSchools.com.
Securities offered through G.A. Reppel & Company, a registered broker-dealer and investment advisor, member FINRA and SIPC. Opinions expressed by Shana are hers alone and are for informational purposes only, and do not necessarily represent those of G.A. Reppel or the outlet on which you are listening. You should consider how the information applies to your situation prior to personally implementing it, and consult any financial professional you work with to make sure it's applicable to your financial plan.
Welcome back here, folks. Let's take a look at the markets. Just opened up, and everything kind of right around the flat line. The Dow's a little bit lower, about 0.1% negative. The S&P just at the flat line, a little lower. NASDAQ a little bit higher as the market's open now. The NASDAQ actually just crept up slightly even more there. So that's what the markets are looking like here as we open the week here. The last full week is the last full. I guess technically it's not the last full week of November because we do have next week as well. But next week will be a short week because of Thanksgiving.
It does throw things off. It's very confusing.
A little bit. I know. And this Christmas season is actually, Sam, the shortest Christmas season that it is because Thanksgiving is the latest.
Yeah.
So, but we'll start Christmas celebration a little early, of course, as we always do. All right, Sam, let's get to this BRI examination here. So I'm really looking forward to this. I think this is important. Let me set the stage here before I toss it over to you, Sam. So we've had this petition up now, folks, for several days it's for Marathon Petroleum Corporation. That's MP66. Our code for them is E66. We want to make sure that you all know about this company. This petition is live. We are urging them to turn back from really the ungodly nonsense that they've been using shareholder dollars to partake in. We're not trying to do this to be troublemakers, and we're not trying to do this to make some kind of unfeeling attacks at people. We actually want this company to do its very best. We're actually doing this for this company's own sake because we believe that it's not only disobedient to God to engage in things that grieve his heart, but it's also bad for business to do that as well, as we've seen. So I would encourage you to sign that petition. But let's hear a little bit. Sam, what's going on with this company specifically? Why do we have a petition for it?
Yeah, I'm saying that this is definitely on the naughty list. You said it's coming up to Christmas. Well, Marathon Petroleum is certainly not getting presents this year. So let's take a look at what's going on here, just so you and our audience know why this is certainly a sell. Number one, they have a 100 score for the last 4 years on the Human Rights Center score that gives top ratings to employers who took concrete steps to establish and implement comprehensive policies, benefits, and practices that ensure greater equity for LGBTQ plus workers and their families. Now, it should be noted from our perspective, if you have a high HRC score as a company, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're not BRI, but it is one of those great examples of where there's smoke, there's fire. And I really can't think of any company that I've looked at recently with a 100% HRC score that's not had some major issues. And this company certainly has some major issues. This year alone, 2024, they have sponsored not one, not two, but 5 Pride events across the country, many of them having events specifically targeting children. The worst of which I could find was the Twin Cities Pride Festival in Minnesota. This year's Twin City Pride Festival kicked off its festival this year with their first ever youth night featuring youth drag competition with prizes, drag performers, free gender affirming rainbow wardrobe. I don't even know what that means, but I don't like the sound of it. And a speech by Lee Fink. Now you ask, who's that? Well, Lee is the first openly transgender member of the Minnesota legislature who, according to Fox News, in 2023 introduced a bill removing anti-pedophile language from the state's Human Rights Act. I laugh a little bit there, not because I think that's great or I even think it's funny. It's just so absurdly wicked that you're taken aback by it. It's insane.
Yeah, and Sam, speaking of where there's smoke, there's fire here, I just want to point out something here about this. This person who gave this speech, first openly transgender member of the Minnesota legislature, just so happens to also want to remove anti-pedophile language from the state's Human Rights Act. I am not saying it's true with all of these people, but there are so many people who are engaged in this stuff who are also actually sexual predators.
Right.
And we have to see how bad this is. We have to see it. Again, I'm not trying to say this in any way to come at these people specifically in like a personal attack way. We're trying to raise awareness for the evil that's being perpetrated. Oftentimes in this case as well, it's targeting children, Sam. It's really bad.
Yeah, it's horrific. And like I said, so many of these others do similar things.
Yeah.
This is probably the most egregious, but the Long Beach Pride Festival in California, again sponsored by MPC. They featured a teen pride event, also including drag shows. Pride San Antonio in Texas, kids under 11 could get in for free. Motor City Pride in Michigan, also kids under 12 could get in for free. Utah Pride, that's the only one I could find that they sponsored that it wasn't clear if they had any specific things targeting children there or not. However, the group Utah Pride, not necessarily the event itself, they are known for hosting things for children. For example, this month, I believe they're doing a youth Halloween party. So, that is certainly sketchy for sure.
Yeah, and these are those 5 pride events that you had mentioned, Sam. That MPC has been sponsoring here. Boy, that's really crazy stuff. And of course, you had also mentioned that Human Rights Center. Sam, it's interesting to see that because you had mentioned where there's smoke, there's fire there. We were talking off the break about how this Human Rights Center scoring system, really, it's a bad thing for companies. That's really kind of been pushed by this leftist push that we have been seeing. But they're using language, Sam. They're using language really to kind of change the meaning of human rights. This is not human rights. This is promoting a specific agenda. That's really what this is.
And you see this so much with the left, too. I mean, they name something in a way that sounds so good that you can't help but be deceived by it until you think about it a couple times. So we saw this with Black Lives Matter. I mean, who wants to oppose Black Lives Matter or Antifa? Well, I don't want to be pro-fascist. I want to be anti-fascist. Right. It's the same thing here. It's the Human Rights Center. I want to be pro-human rights. Any company in their right mind would think, yeah, of course I want to be pro-human rights. And if I can have a 100% score on that, that would be a pretty great thing to have. But you dig into this a little bit more. This really has nothing to do about human rights. This is a pro-LGBT agenda that is focusing on allowing transgender surgeries at work, or at least funding them, having these pride events, and all this other ridiculousness that has nothing to do with your core God-given rights that you get for being a human being made in his image.
Yeah, absolutely. Sam, thanks for bringing this up to us, man. This is really good for us to know. Folks, we want to try to do this from time to time, especially when we have these petitions here, as we want to make sure that you have not only the opportunity to let your voice be heard, but also to know why. We want to know why we are doing this. And listen, it's not just because we're looking for companies we want to start pulling the trigger. We're actively trying to actually make a difference in the culture, and we believe this is a way to do that. As of right now, we have well over 400 signatures, but I'd love to hit that 500, even 600 mark today. If you have not signed this petition today, you got to go do so right now. Hopefully what we just talked about is on your mind as you are doing this as well, that you're doing this for the protection of children, to protect them from an absolutely wretched, wicked agenda that also allows for known child abusers to get their access to children. This is just so important here, folks. This is why we want to let our voices be heard with this company. Also, by the way, this letter, it's not just going to some random employee there. This is going to the higher ups of the company for them to know, hey, there's this army of biblically responsible investors who are going to withdraw their investing dollars from your company and will invest it in other companies, competitors of yours even, unless you stop doing this. And so this is really important, folks. I would encourage you to sign that petition today if you've not done so. Well, we do have the ag report coming up here in just a moment. We'll hear from Craig Haugaard with the ag, and then we've got more financial issues coming up after this. We'll get to some news headlines also. By the way, the phone lines are open. If you want to join the conversation, now's probably the last chance to do it, maybe in the beginning of the next segment. But the number again for you is 610-363-1110. Again, that's 610-363-1110. Here comes Craig Haugaard with today's ag report, and then we'll be right back for more. Stay tuned.
This is Craig Haugaard with your financial issues ag update for November 18th. Corn prices closed higher on Friday, the only time last week that they were actually able to post a higher close. And that rally on Friday seemed to come from news that Mexico is apparently going to be opening the door for importing of GMO yellow corn. Also viewed as positive for corn was an announcement that North Dakota's Public Service Commission has approved a permit for the Summit Carbon Pipeline. As a result, December corn was a nickel higher at $4.24 per bushel. Soybeans had a couple of positive pieces of news. First, the October NOPA crush report came in at 199.96 million bushels, setting a new all-time record for the month. Secondly, in an effort to placate President-elect Trump, China announced that they are changing their tax rebate system, which has helped drive the exporting of used cooking oil. Ending the rebate possibly ends the very cheap used cooking oil that's been entering the U.S. and creates more demand for soybean oil. January beans were 11 cents higher in the news, closing at $9.98.5. Wheat was supported by a weaker dollar on Friday, as well as weekly export sales. It fell kind of in the middle of trade expectations. Minneapolis December wheat was 5 3/4 cents higher at $5.72 1/4. Kansas City rose by 7 cents to close at $5.40, and Chicago was 6 1/4 cents better at $5.36.5. Cotton futures seem like they're destined to test the life of contract lows. Friday's close had the December futures down 152 points, ending the day at 66.80. Livestock futures turned in a mixed performance. December live cattle were unchanged at $182.95 per hundredweight. January feeder cattle had a huge day, closing $4.02.5 higher as they ended the session at $247.22.5 per hundred. In December, lean hog futures dropped by 60 cents, ending the day at $79.50 per hundredweight. Class 3 milk futures put in a key reversal higher. At the closing bell, we had December futures up 32 points as they closed out the week at 18.76. This has been Craig Haugaard with your Financial Issues Ag Update. We'll be right back with more financial issues after this.
Is inflation, national debt, and volatility in the markets causing you anxiety? Well, you're not alone. I'm Shana Burt, host of Financial Issues, a nationally syndicated, biblically based program. During our daily program, we help you navigate the current financial climate and provide valuable insight so that you can be a good steward with the money that God has blessed you with. The Bible tells us not to worry and to seek wise counsel, and that's why Financial Issues is here.
Join our partnership community by visiting financialissues.org/join.
Samaritan Ministries believes in a custom approach to healthcare that empowers small business owners to create and find their voice in the world. Like designer Catherine, who creates one-of-a-kind unique jewelry made to order for her customers. Her work is thoughtful, personal, and individual attention to detail is what drives this entrepreneur. Samaritan Ministries, a boutique, crafted Christian approach to healthcare.
Every day, kids all across America are coming to school with some kind of hidden pain.
I've seen kids come in who are just so confused about what's right and what's wrong, just having no idea that God loves them. And this just breaks my heart. Crossroads has the opportunity to bring the Word of God right into the public school, to reach children right where they are.
And when we see that happen, we see God changing lives.
We want to see kids not only come to Christ, but pursue a lifelong relationship with Him. And so local churches are uniquely positioned to disciple those children as they become young adults and through their lifespan.
Crossroads comes alongside a church and provides that church with a club structure, curriculum, training, and ongoing coaching for them to run these outreaches in public schools.
If you are burdened for the children of America, consider making a donation to Crossroads Kids Club. For more information, visit reachOurschools.com.
The opinions and recommendations expressed on this program do not necessarily represent the opinions of the station or any of the program sponsors. Additionally, all products or services offered by the program sponsors may not be known by the program.
Thanks for hanging with us on the show today, folks. Hard to believe it's already the last segment of the day. Don't always do this, and I apologize to our Facebook audience, but Facebook, we appreciate you so much. I see Mark saying good morning. Happy Monday, everyone. Happy Monday to you, Mark. It's good to see you. And Alejandro, of course, faithful Alejandro, always commenting there. Good to see you there as well, brother. And so many on the chat as well today. Good to see you all joining us on financialissues.org/live. Nelson and Richard and Royce. And my chat had paused. Claude is there as well. So I missed some of those earlier comments. I had them up and then my computer conked out on me, so I had to miss some of those. But I see you all there, and if you're there and you haven't said hello, please go ahead and do so. Hey, quick partner benefit I want to share with you all. So this has been something that we have talked about on the program for many years, actually, and I was trying to figure out how to do it, as now, the Bible study is under my leadership. And so I wanted to share with you all that if you are a partner, you can now get full access to our past Bible studies. So if you miss a Bible study on Friday morning at 6:30, as I know that can be a tough time for many of you, you can now, if you are a partner, you can go to the partner side of the website, you go to the partner tab, and you go down to Bible Study Archives, click on that button, and the past Bible studies are there. You can listen to them at your leisure. The Bible study itself is still free and live on Friday mornings at 6:30 Eastern Time. That will not change. But we did want to give the partners just a little show of our thanks and our appreciation for you. If you do enjoy the Bible study, but you can't make that 6:30 call time, you can always go back and listen to it. So I'd encourage you to do so. Speaking of Bible study, Thanksgiving week, we're meeting on Wednesday of that week. So mark your calendars. Wednesday the 27th will be Bible study day, not Friday of that week. I'll mention it as it gets closer as well. All right, Sam, let's get to a couple headlines here to close out our show. Very interesting one here that we saw. Mike Pence is back in the news. Of course, Donald Trump's former running mate, no longer. What did he say about RFK and the Senate and HHS and all that fun stuff?
Well, Mike Pence is not too pleased with Bobby Kennedy being the choice for HHS. He is now urging Republicans in the Senate to reject him. Why, you might ask? Well, it's over his stance on abortion. He said, quote, "If confirmed, RFK Jr. would be the most pro-abortion Republican-appointed Secretary of HHS in modern history." The former vice president cited RFK's previous defense of abortion on demand during all 9 months of pregnancy and to codify Roe v. Wade into federal law as his reasons for wanting to reject RFK for the position. Just for some clarification here, back in May of this year, Bobby Kennedy said he does support full-term abortions. He said that during a podcast, though he later clarified what he meant by full term is he meant up to fetal viability, which is usually around 24 weeks. I actually kind of hate that term because 24 weeks is actually 6 months, which is still insane. It really doesn't save his argument too much, but at least you know that what he's not talking about there is aborting the baby right before they're born. So that is not what he means.
Right
Kennedy's campaign also came out and said he does not support legislation banning abortion and says abortion should always be a woman's choice. And for more clarification here of what this looks like, his true argument, he had a conversation with Daily Wire's Ben Shapiro earlier this year, and they really went at it over this abortion issue. I think in this clip you'll see that it's pretty clear that Kennedy is warm towards the pro-life position. He's not hostile to it, but you definitely couldn't say that he himself is pro-life. So let's take a look at this clip so you get a better feel of what Bobby Kennedy's actual position is.
When you look at, pro-lifers who say, okay, well, I understand that you believe it's a tragedy, but along those same baseline biological lines, it's not just a tragedy, it's a crime against the child because the child has an independent interest. What do you say to that?
I say that I understand that position, and I don't agree with it. I think that the solution of having the state come in and dictate choices that that the woman is making is not that's not a good solution to me. That have a bureaucrat making these very, very difficult moral choices.
Very interesting there, Sam.
Yep. So there you kind of see it. Yeah. He's probably coming at it from more of a libertarian-ish perspective, saying that he doesn't want the government in these medical positions, medical decisions that women have to make. And that is somewhat in line with his thinking about other medical choices as well. But as we know that this isn't just any medical choice, this is actually dealing with killing of a human being. So that raises a question, Seth. What do you think of Mike Pence's position here? Is he right that Republicans in the Senate should be skeptical of him in this highly important medical position in the government because of this pro-abortion stance?
Well, it's an interesting question, Sam. I do think in a vacuum, I think Pence is right to be raising certain alarm bells based on what Bobby Kennedy has said. However, I think we have to look at this with the full picture. See, we often, Sam, have to do this when we study history, is you can't look at historical events in and of themselves. You have to look at what came before them. I'll give you an example is you can't just look at the Crusades in the 11th to the 13th century. You have to look at what was happening in the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th centuries to lead up to it. And in some cases, what happened afterwards as well. I think this is the same thing. This is technically history now. It's just a lot more recent history. Here's what I'm kind of thinking here, Sam. I think Pence is right in what he's saying. I also think we have to see that Pence is probably not just coming at this from a virtuous pro-life stance. Pence also has some personal skin in the game because he was ignored by the Trump team. He was not chosen to be Trump's running mate, and we know there's some bad blood there. Sam, I can't help but think that maybe there's a little more personal animosity here than just a simple statement of Pence's pro-life. And I'm not coming at Pence for his I stand with him wholeheartedly that babies need to be defended from the moment of conception until they die. But it's just interesting to think about, Sam.
And you got to think that in this position, Robert Kennedy is going to be following Trump's lead. So if he does step out of line, the reason Trump's putting him in there, as he is for most of his positions, is to clean house. He wants him to gut these bureaucratic agencies of the deep state, these entrenched people, especially in light of the corruption that we saw during COVID-19. So you think, who would be better to do that than Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who's been, banging this drum for the past couple of years? He'd be great for that specifically. But I get that there's concern over some of his beliefs there. But if he steps too much out of line, you'd think that, hey, Trump's definitely going to rein him in.
Yeah. And there's just a couple other things here I wanted to point out. Kennedy mentions the point of fetal viability. Sam, you're exactly right. That is absolute nonsense. I hate the viability term. It's just so annoying. I mean, technically, if you think about it, children up until the age of like 6 or 7 are not viable because they can't take care of themselves. Right. If I left Josiah to just fend for himself, he would eventually die. The point of that viability question is, can this thing survive on its own? Someone with a severe mental disability cannot survive on their own. So should we kill them? Like, it's nonsense here. So I would disagree with Kennedy on that.
I might disagree with you about Josiah, though. He's a tough little guy. I think he might be able to survive on his own, at least for a while.
He might try to go a little too hard and maybe try to bang his head into a wall or something like that. Yeah, absolutely. But here's a really interesting thing, Sam. So, and folks, I'm mentioning something that happened on the show recently. I had Dan Steiner of Preborn on, I think it was a week and a half ago. It was right after Trump got elected. You can go back and listen to this show that we did. I think it was the Thursday of election week. So that would be November the 7th, I think it was. And Dan joined me in the first part of that program. And I asked Dan on air, I asked him kind of like a question kind of related to this about Trump's inner circle. He mentioned RFK, he mentioned Elon Musk. And he said something very interesting to me. So Dan had said that he was sitting with, I think it was with Tucker Carlson and RFK on a plane. And he introduced himself to RFK. He said, "I'm Dan Steiner." RFK asked him, "What do you do?" And Dan said basically something to the effect of, "My job is to put Planned Parenthood out of business." And RFK looked at him and smiled and said, "Good. He hates Planned Parenthood." RFK does. So I'm also wondering too, if maybe he's leaning, like you said, Sam, he's warming up to that pro-life cause. Maybe it's very interesting here. All of that stuff to kind of consider. By the way, props to Ben Shapiro, who is another advocate for pro-life, and someone else who is a supporter of Dan Steiner's work over at Preborn too. It's pretty cool. But folks, all of that to say, that's part of why we love Preborn, is they are so influential in this whole culture war and fighting for the rights of the unborn. Dan is well versed. He's in the inner circles of, some of these folks here who are at the very tippy top, and they're just doing some great work. So you got to check them out at preborn.com if you want to save babies and spread the gospel doing it. Just an amazing ministry there. Interesting topic, Sam, for sure.
I know, a little bit controversial. Yeah. I didn't know if it was going to rub some people the wrong way. I mean, to be fair, Bobby Kennedy is fairly controversial in and of himself. So, he's bound to ruffle some feathers.
Absolutely, for sure. Well, Sam, let's get to a quick one here to close the show. Donald Trump apparently is ending Biden's EV tax credit. What can you tell us about this?
Yeah, so this is just a quick topper right here. So Trump is trying to transition away from Biden's EV tax credit. As you said, that's a $7,500 tax credit for EVs. The credit was part of Biden's so-called Inflation Reduction Act, which, as we all know, wasn't really having anything to do with reducing inflation. It was actually a backdoor way of getting at least parts of the Green New Deal implemented, hence the EVs. Trump is also expected at the same time to not only repeal that, but also to repeal Biden's tailpipe emission limits for car manufacturers as well. So we're beginning to get a feel for what Trump's deregulation policies are going to look like. He's already promising tons of those, as well as what his green energy and environmental policy is going to look like on top of that.
Yeah, good. Yeah, definitely, Sam. Thank you. We could see kind of that backswing there as we saw the Biden administration really focusing in on expanding EVs. I think we might see Trump go back the other way there for sure. Might have an impact on gas prices, folks. Gas prices have been inching downward a little bit. Today they sit at $3.07. That's a national average. I can't help but think and hope that gas prices will decrease. Of course, we'll have to wait and see what will happen there. Boy, great show with you folks. Sam, thank you for those headlines. Thank you all for joining on the chat as well. God willing, we'll have Shana tomorrow, and I'm excited for that, to have her on. I hope you are as well. I hope that you'll join early, and if you've got questions for her, the best time to call, folks, is right as the show starts, 9:05 Eastern Time, right as the show begins. We'll make sure to get to your call as soon as we can tomorrow. Until now, good and faithful stewards with all of it. God bless you all. See you tomorrow.
If we ever forget that we're one nation under God, then we will be a nation gone under.
Thank you for joining us. This has been an FISM production.